Farmers might be thinking along these lines, I didn't use it for last year, I had a capacity to use it in the system for 2024, didn't use it because of whatever way it worked out. What if I don't declare that and have a little bit of extra for next year?
Yes, you will, but if you get an inspection and that's found on the farm, then you'll be seen as being in breach.
Okay, understand. And that's linked to your single farm payment, I would presume, in terms of a breach in that
Yes.
Fertiliser is one of the biggest expenditure items on tillage farms, and it will return handsomely when used correctly. The Department of Agriculture put the fertiliser register in place this year, and given the tighter official monitoring of fertiliser purchases on your farm, inappropriate use may lead to reductions in your direct payments. You're listening to the latest episode of the Tillage Edge with me, Michael Hennessy. We'd really appreciate it if you could listen, follow, and give us a review on Apple or Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm delighted today to be joined by Pat Murphy, the Head of Environmental Knowledge Transfer in Teagasc, to chat through how to navigate this new fertiliser database so that you can stay on the right side of the requirements. Pat, you might just remind us about the fertiliser register and what it's actually designed to do.
Fertiliser register is designed to, I suppose, get a picture at farm level of the use of nitrogen and phosphorus in particular, and other fertilisers as well. It does record potassium, it does record lime. So it's to try and get a full picture of the level of nutrient going out at farmer level.
Okay, and that's to track it on a national basis, or is it to kind of hammer a farmer at a local basis?
It's a little bit of both. I suppose nationally we're trying to limit the amount of nitrogen. We're trying to, make sure that the phosphorus that's used is used to best effect. We're not trying to reduce it because, in fact, we're probably a little bit below our required level of usage in some areas. But it's trying to make sure that it's used in the most appropriate way, going where it's needed to go, and I suppose not going where there's potential surpluses.
And is it all about N and P, nitrogen and phosphate? You mentioned that K is being recorded anyways, but is it really about the nitrogen and phosphate bit?
It is, but from the perspective of its use in, I suppose, assisting farmers to improve soil fertility, the record of K and lime is also a key part of being able to support farmers and farmers knowing themselves where they sit with those other elements as well. So it provides information, I suppose, across the board. From a regulatory perspective, N and P are the two where we have environmental concerns. So it is, I suppose, and was introduced primarily as an environmental measure, but there are other benefits from the register as well.
And of course, if a farmer uses, and we can, the register can track this, if the farmer's using a little bit less K or lime usage is not great, that's going to make the N and P less efficient either ways, I would presume.
Absolutely, and sometimes what you get is, I suppose, an excess use of nitrogen where the soil fertility isn't optimal. So you tend to use more nitrogen to replace that.
So maybe farmers have forgotten about this a little bit, but how did that work through the year for farmers?
I suppose at the beginning of the year you had an inventory taken, and then each purchase of fertiliser was recorded at merchant level. So some merchants are recording that immediately to the Department of Agriculture. Some are submitting it on a monthly basis. So what that means is you can have a little bit of a lag in the information that's there on the register for individual farmers. But in essence, every sale of fertiliser and lime are being recorded or are due to be recorded on the register to that individual farmer, using the herd number of the farmer to do that. And at the end of the year, then you have, and which is we're now currently needing to do, is you have a final register an inventories, a register of inventories, which farmers need to submit. And basically, they'll take what you had at the beginning, add it to what you bought, take off what you had at the end, and that gives you your usage during the year. Okay,
so a number of farmers might have bought fertiliser from one, but maybe two or maybe three different outlets, merchants or wherever. The department have a view of all of that now?
Yes, and they will pull that together.
Okay. And what about a farmer who was buying maybe on behalf of somebody else through a partnership or maybe a contractor or something like that? What happens? I mean, they didn't actually use that fertilizer. What happens to that?
Yeah, and there's provision for a farmer or to be. There's a user and there's and it's not the exact word they use, a supplier. There's a provision to register as effectively a supplier as well. So the merchants, they do a similar job, what comes in and what goes out. And in some cases where farmers may be doing work for others and buying on their behalf, there is a provision there, but you need to register to do that.
Okay, so it can come into your farm and then go back out again.
Exactly.
And it's not registered to your farm. But what about organic manures, Pat? There's a lot of tillage farmers importing organic manures. Is that going on the same database?
It's going on a sister database, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. There's two separate databases, one and two processes, one collecting the movement of organic manures and most organic manures are being now registered on that. Some still not.
So the two of those are combined in the background,
so they can be combined in the background by the Department of Agriculture, so as to get I suppose a clear picture of movement of all nutrient in and out of the farm.
Okay, so I'm just thinking here, where's the wriggle room in all this? How's a farmer? In the past there probably was a wee bit of wriggle room, but where's the wriggle room now?
Yeah, and I suppose that's one of the things, there really isn't very much wriggle room anymore. And if you look at maybe one of the areas that farmers used a little bit of wriggle room might have been around final stocks. But the fact that we now have final stocks being declared on the 15th of September and there's 3.5 months then for inspections, if anybody decides to be a little bit inventive in that space, they need... and get an inspection in the following period, there's potentially trouble there. So really, the wriggle room is gone. So
it's that kind of, they should bring it home to roost for an awful lot of people in terms of the making sure everything is right according to hopefully the nutrient management plan that maybe did earlier in the year. But and you mentioned that on the 15th of September, I think you said, of which is now gone, but farmers have to put in the amount. So if a guy had 3 tons of 18612 or 6 tons of nitrogen still in the yard, have got to declare that's unused for this year, because obviously you can't use that for the rest of the year anyway. So that's going to sit in the farmyard. So that has to be done, is it?
Yes, and it's the amount that was there on the 15th of September. So if for instance, I had bought since the 15th of December and doing my declaration before the deadline on the 15th of October, obviously what's been bought if you did happen to buy anything in that intervening period, which is probably unlikely, it doesn't have to be. It will come in next year's purchases.
Okay. So what if farmers might be thinking along these lines, I didn't use it for last year, I had a capacity to use it in the system for 2024, didn't use it because of whatever way it worked out. What if I don't declare that and have a little bit of extra for next year? Yes,
you will, but if you get an inspection and that's found on the farm, then you'll be seen as being in breach.
Okay, understand. And that's linked to your single farm payment, I would presume, in terms of a breach in that side of things. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So what about for a farmer then who is importer, has maybe an empty a slurry store, and he's importing organic manures kind of from now till Christmas, putting that in there, what happens to that? Does that go into the stocks for last year, or does it go for next year? What happens to that?
No, in fact, there's, I suppose, what you would describe as a little bit of an anomaly there. If there's import in this year, it goes into this year's usage. And I suppose it's an issue that has been raised with the department quite a bit, that as you import in the back end of the year, and particularly if you have with this new scheme support for tillage farmers in particular to develop facilities to import manures of I suppose dairy and pig farmers predominantly, that as you import it in a calendar year currently, it stays with that fertiliser usage in that current year. And I think that's something that we will be, I suppose, approaching the department to clarify and maybe change over the next while, and it would make the whole system then a lot more transparent.
And it is something we've been flagging along
It is
the
something
way
we've
anyway.
been flagging, yeah.
Anyway, so I mean they are aware of it, and hopefully they will get around it, because I mean I suppose for orderly distribution of all these nutrients that are very concentrated in some areas, getting onto tillage ground has to be a good thing. And
absolutely.
But I suppose coming back to maybe water quality, which we'll talk about in a minute, getting that into springtime is probably most crucial. So storing that.
It's making sure, and I think it's a huge issue, or a significant issue, is making sure that we do get that spread in the springtime. The spreading of organic manures in the autumn on crops is probably not a good practice for water quality. I think we're pretty sure it's not a good practice, having it stored and spread at the appropriate time in the spring is where we're going to need to focus if we're going to bring water quality improvements about.
So I think you mentioned, and a good few tillage farmers buy some chemical fertiliser towards the back end of the year. It helps with accounts maybe some years and that kind of thing. But the stocks are already declared. That purchases then, that goes to next year, that goes to 25 crop.
Yeah, as soon as we're past the 15th of September, everything else is for the next year. So 15th of December 2024 to 14th of September 2025 are associated with the production year 2025.
I think a lot of farmers who've been listening to what we've been talking about so far will be kind of going, oh Jesus, this sounds a bit serious. There are inspections ongoing at the moment from the department, and am I right in saying...
And the County Council.
And the County Council, but I'm right in saying, well, hang on there in a second, we'll get back to the County Council now in a second. But the department are out there at the moment. Have the department the capacity to use all of these records that have been, and purchase of fertilisers and organic manures, to use that in their inspection process in 2024?
Yes. So it's used. Now, the degree to which they will do a calculation of, say for derogation, will they calculate for everybody and do a total and calculate everybody's fertiliser usage? They may take a slightly softer approach year one as we get up and running, but the intention is there to have to do that on an ongoing basis. So I think the safe thing to do would be to assume that that data is being used from this year. For
the full calculation. You mentioned the county councils there in the other breath you said, which would scare the bejesus out of lots of people as well. Do they have access to the same database? Yeah,
they will. My assumption is that there is a sharing of data between the county councils who are doing inspections and the Department of Agriculture. They have worked together over the years. Department of Agriculture initially would have done a lot of the inspections on behalf of the county councils, but the county councils have ramped up their capability of doing inspections in the last couple of years, and that was something that was mandated by the EU, that the local authorities do that, and a huge number of extra staff have come in, and there's significant inspections going on. It may not be their main area of focus. They may be more looking at I suppose physical threats, issues around the farmyard, but as far as I know, they will be working with the department and have access.
I suppose really all of this is aimed, I suppose, primarily towards water quality, pretty much all of it. And all I suppose we've heard through the media is water quality is terrible and it's going down and it's never been as bad and it's absolutely dreadful. But is that correct? Is that right in the true sense of the word?
Yeah, and I suppose there's to go back to the old adage of lies, damn lies, and statistics. They're along the period, I think, from 2013, where I suppose nutrient levels in water was reducing. We had 7 or 8 years of the nitrates derogation coming in, and if you remember, we had 3 of 4 really wet years, and to be honest with you, there was a degree of washout. So 2013 probably was lowest. We saw rise in nutrient levels through the I suppose 2013 to 2016, 2017 period. 2018 and 2019, we had the drought of 2018, which caused really high nitrates losses, and in fact we saw fairly high phosphorus losses in 2018, 2019 and 2020. Since then we're seeing a degree of decline, back down, I think, towards the levels we would have had in the 2014-2015 period.
Decline, you mean it's getting better?
Sorry, a decline in levels of nutrient. So we're seeing that. We're not seeing it everywhere, and it's quite differential. But we are seeing signs of some improvement. But I think if you were looking at it in any statistical way over the last 7 or 8 years, you would kind of say it's been static rather than improving dramatically. So we do need to get a lot of further improvement. If you look at the likes of the Slaney and the Barrow in particular with nitrates levels, we are still way in excess of where we need to be to get estuarine waters to the standard we need to. If you look at other rivers like the Suir and the Nore, still well above on nitrate. The Cork rivers, if you go down to the Blackwater Lee, are just a little bit over in that respect. And if you go up country to the whole Boyne catchment, that's been an area where we've seen, unfortunately, fairly significant deteriorations. And in some of those rivers then as well, like the Boyne and the Suir, there's fairly significant phosphorus problems as well.
Okay, so there's still work to be done by everybody.
Still a huge amount of work to be done.
And obviously the tillage farmers have a part to play in that. You've been working in this job an awful long time, Pat, and I know you're retiring shortly, and you've done fantastic work along the time, and we'll wish you all the best in that. But I mean, you're farming a bit as well yourself. You come through, big time farming country. What actions have you seen from tillage farmers that will kind of give you hope? There's lots of people doing really good work out there.
I suppose an example would be this year we had the advisors working with the ASSOP advisors down in Wexford and Carlow. Had an initiative to try and improve the level of uptake of catch crops, and that was supported by the Farming for Water EIP, and also I suppose the advisors over a period in that area, they worked with farmers to participate in acres also to get an increase in catch crops. That's I suppose the biggest method that farmers have of reducing nitrate loss to water. And then if you're looking at the phosphorus losses in those areas, what you're looking mainly is overland flow and loss of a nutrient effectively in sediment. On those days where you see water travelling over the land and the rivers getting brown, you're seeing potentially a significant loss of phosphorus. And some of the measures that are going in place, you're seeing farmers being a bit more, I suppose, careful about riparian, about riverside margins, and trying to make sure that the water is slowed down. Now, catch crops will do that a little bit as well, but trying to make sure that there's a little bit of space to try and stop the loss of soil, slow the water, the sediment will settle in it, the water will continue to flow, and margins have the capacity to do that.
Okay, and I suppose to a degree they'll all have a benefit along the way, and hopefully the cover crops will benefit long term for tillage farmers anyway.
Yeah, and again, I suppose a lot of research being done and needing to be done and being compiled in relation to catch crops. There's a good bit we don't know about catch crops, and for instance, one of the things that was done in, again, the Castledockrell catchment was looking at broadcasting seed into the growing crop, and particularly in a year like this year, it could have a significant place because the harvest was so late that the time space for the catch crop to begin its growth in that period in August, when it needs to be growing, if we're going to get significant growth, was most of the crops were in the ground. So I think we need a bit of work in terms of what is the best form of catch crops, what are the best seeding methods, how do we get in quickly to make sure that you're getting enough plant material, because the amount of nitrogen you get is directly associated with the
Biomass.
The biomass. And biomass, the difference in biomass in a crop, if you sow it in the first week versus the fourth week of August, is probably about a doubling.
It's a big area to look at, and look, hopefully, Pat, over the next number of years, we're going to get an awful lot of that. This year it certainly didn't suit it, but I think of a normal year, with a little bit of effort, I think most farmers can probably get that in, and we should probably be looking at 100% of our spring crops going into the winter with a cover crop on it.
With some form of cover. And I suppose the other thing then is really care around the use of organic manures in tillage. I think there's a great scope for tillage to take the surplus organic manures that are coming from the animal enterprises, but we just need to be really careful about it, about the timing of it, getting it out just in time for the crop to take it up. Because I think any time that you leave organic manure with nitrogen in it out on land that's not growing anything, well, then the scope is for that to go straight down to water.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what it's about, is trying to make sure our entire environment is better for not just for ourselves, for our children, and in time to come we've a much healthier environment. Pat, that's all we have time for. Delighted you could join me. I'm going to wish you a very happy retirement. I know it's coming up shortly, and hope it's happy and healthy.
Thank you.
So that's it for this week, and my thanks to Pat for joining me on the show. And once again, I want to wish Pat a long, happy and healthy retirement. So finally, if you enjoyed the podcast, then recommend it to a friend or colleague. And as always, rate, review and follow on Apple or Spotify so you never miss an episode. And for more information, go to teagasc.ie. I'm Michael Hennessy. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week with more tillage news and advice.